The sun burned without mercy, hanging high in the sky like a ball of fire that refused to move. The dirt road shimmered in the heat, waves rising from its surface as if the earth itself were breathing flames. Maria walked slowly along that endless stretch of dust, each step sending sharp pain through the soles of her bare feet. The ground had long ago blistered her skin, and now every stone and thorn felt like a blade. Still, she did not stop. In her arms, she carried her baby boy, Daniel. His tiny face was red from the heat, his small fingers gripping weakly at her worn shawl. She tried to shield him from the sun with the thin fabric, though it offered little protection. Sweat dripped from her forehead, stinging her eyes, but she dared not loosen her hold on him. He was the only strength she had left. A wagon rolled past in a cloud of dust. The driver glanced at her, his eyes lingering for only a moment before he snapped the reins and continued on. Two men on horseback slowed as they approached, whispering to each other while staring at her torn dress and swollen feet. They did not ask if she needed water. They did not offer shade. They rode away. Daniel began to cry, a dry, fragile sound that broke her heart more than the heat broke her body. Maria pressed her lips to his forehead. "Just a little farther, mi amor," she whispered, though she had no idea how far farther truly was. The landlord's cruel words still echoed in her mind, the memory of her belongings thrown into the dirt that morning burning hotter than the sun above. Her legs trembled, and she stumbled, barely catching herself before falling. For a brief moment, darkness crept into her vision. She feared she might collapse right there on the road where no one would care enough to stop. Then, through the haze of heat and dust, she saw something in the distance, a small ranch beyond a broken fence, standing alone against the horizon. It was the only sign of shelter for miles. Gathering the last pieces of her strength, Maria shifted Daniel closer to her chest and forced herself forward, praying that someone there might see her, and this time, choose to care. Ethan Cole had grown used to silence. It clung to the wooden walls of his ranch house and settled deep in his bones. The wind moving through the dry grass and the slow creak of the porch swing were the only sounds that kept him company most days. Since losing his wife and little girl to a fever 3 winters ago, he had stopped expecting anything from the world. People brought pain. Distance brought peace. That afternoon, he sat on the porch, hat tipped low over his eyes, watching the empty road stretch across the land like a faded scar. He wasn't looking for anything. He never was. But movement caught his attention, a figure swaying in the heat. At first, he thought it was a trick of the sun. Then he saw her more clearly. A woman walking barefoot, clothes dusty and torn, a baby clutched tightly to her chest. Even from that distance, he could see the unsteady rhythm of her steps. She stumbled once, regained her balance, and kept going. Ethan felt something twist painfully in his chest. He told himself it wasn't his concern. People passed that road all the time. The world had never stopped for him. Why should he stop for it? Then she fell to one knee. The baby's faint cry carried across the wind. Without fully deciding to, Ethan stood. He grabbed his hat, filled a metal canteen with cool well water, and walked toward the road. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if he were walking back into a life he had sworn to leave behind. When he reached her, she looked up at him through half-closed eyes. Fear flickered there first, then desperation. Her lips were dry and cracked. "Please," she whispered, barely audible. Ethan didn't ask questions. He handed her the canteen, steadying it as her shaking hand struggled to hold it. Then he gently lifted the baby from her arms. The child was light, too light, but warm and alive. "You're safe," he said quietly, surprised at how rough his voice sounded. For the first time in years, Ethan felt something other than grief. He felt needed. And that was enough to make him turn toward home, not alone this time. Maria's first steps into Ethan's ranch were hesitant. She carried herself as if every ounce of her strength had been drained by the long walk under the scorching sun, and in truth, it had. Her bare feet, still blistered and sore, left faint red marks on the wooden floor as she followed Ethan into the small guest room he had prepared. The room smelled faintly of fresh linen and pine from the nearby barn, a stark contrast to the dust and sweat that had clung to her for days. She lowered Daniel gently onto the clean blanket Ethan had spread for him, and he cooed softly, finally able to rest without the harsh sun beating down on him. Ethan busied himself around the ranch house, bringing water in a clean glass, preparing a simple meal of bread and stew, and quietly tending to the baby while Maria washed her hands and attempted to pull her hair into something manageable. At first, there was an awkward silence between them, the kind that speaks volumes of lives that have been shaped by loss and suffering. Ethan's eyes, roughened by years of loneliness, watched Maria as she moved carefully around the room, her small gesture speaking more of strength than words ever could. She was cautious, wary of him, and yet grateful, a combination that Ethan found quietly compelling. As the days passed, Maria began to regain small fragments of her former energy. She helped with chores, feeding the chickens, mending the torn fabric of her dress and the old sheets in the house, chopping wood, and carrying water from the well. Ethan, who had long been accustomed to doing everything alone, observed her resilience with a mix of admiration and disbelief. He offered help when she faltered, but gradually, it became a rhythm of silent cooperation, two people navigating the weight of hardship together. Evenings brought quiet reflection on the porch. Maria would sit beside Ethan as the sun dipped low over the fields, casting long shadows across the ranch. She noticed the scars in his eyes, the weight of his past that clung to him like the dust outside, and she did not ask for explanations. In those moments, words felt unnecessary. Daniel's small laughter and playful coos filled the space between them, creating a warmth that had been absent for years. For Ethan, the sound was almost sacred, a reminder that life could still offer moments of beauty even after devastation. He found himself speaking in ways he hadn't for years, his voice rough but soft when addressing Maria and the baby, discovering a patience and tenderness he thought he had lost forever. And slowly, the ranch, once empty and quiet, began to feel alive again. Weeks passed on the ranch, and the once quiet house had grown warm with life. Maria and Daniel settled into a routine, the days marked by small chores, laughter, and quiet evenings on the porch where the sun spilled gold across the fields. Ethan moved among them with a careful watchfulness, never pushing, but always present. There was a rhythm to their lives now, one built from simple acts of care and the slow rebuilding of trust. Maria's strength returned, her skin healing, her voice regaining its soft clarity, and her eyes shining with a hope that had been nearly extinguished. Daniel thrived in her arms and in Ethan's presence, his laughter echoing across the fields like the promise of a new beginning. Then one morning, a letter arrived. The envelope was worn, the handwriting familiar. Maria's hands trembled as she broke the seal. Inside was news she had hoped never to hear again: her husband had been found. He had been working in another state, unaware of the desperate situation she had faced. He wrote with urgency and regret, expressing his desire to bring the family back together and rebuild what had been lost. Maria sat in stunned silence, holding the letter tightly as the reality settled in. She looked at Ethan, whose eyes met hers with a quiet understanding. No words were needed, he had known this day might come. Ethan stepped back, giving her space. "You can go," he said softly, his voice steady but carrying the weight of unspoken emotion. Maria looked out over the ranch, her gaze sweeping the fields, the barn, and the porch that had become a place of safety and solace. Her heart ached with the thought of leaving, but she knew she had to honor the life she had created with her husband and the promise of a future for Daniel. She knelt beside Ethan, pressing her hand to his rough, calloused one. "My husband left to build a better future for us," she whispered, her voice breaking, "but you gave us one when no one else would." When her husband arrived days later, the reunion was a mix of tears, apologies, and heartfelt gratitude. Ethan watched quietly from the porch as Maria embraced her husband, their hands entwined with hope and reconciliation. Daniel laughed, sensing the love surrounding him, unaware of the complex emotions in the adults around him. As they departed, the ranch fell silent once more. But the emptiness felt different this time. It was not sorrow or loneliness that lingered in the house and fields. It was peace, a quiet certainty that even fleeting moments of connection could heal broken hearts. Ethan sat on the porch, looking over the horizon, knowing that sometimes, being someone's miracle was reward enough, and that life, though unpredictable, could still hold grace.